3 true, terrifying Reddit horror stories. Story 1, The Man Outside My Apartment. This happened when I was living alone in a small apartment just outside the city. It wasn't the nicest building, but it was cheap and quiet. Most of the tenants kept to themselves. I had been there for about 6 months and nothing strange had ever happened. One night around 11:30, I was watching TV when I heard someone walking slowly down the hallway outside my apartment. It wasn't unusual. The floors were thin and you could hear people moving around all the time. But what caught my attention was that the footsteps stopped directly outside my door. At first, I thought maybe someone had the wrong apartment. But the footsteps didn't leave. They just stayed there, standing, right outside my door. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. No movement. No knocking. Just silence. After about a minute, I walked over to the door and looked through the peephole, and immediately stepped back. There was a man standing in the hallway facing my door. But the strange part was that he wasn't moving at all. He was just staring straight ahead, not knocking, not looking around, just standing there like he was waiting for something. I figured maybe he had the wrong apartment and felt awkward knocking, so I called out through the door and asked if he needed help. No response. The man didn't move. At this point, something felt really off. So I quietly walked back to the living room and turned off the lights. About 10 seconds later, I heard the doorknob move. Slowly, whoever it was had tried to open my door. Luckily, it was locked. Then I heard the footsteps leave down the hallway. The next morning, I checked with my landlord and asked if anyone new had moved in. He told me no, but he did mention something that made my stomach drop. Apparently, someone had been going around the building at night trying apartment doors to see which ones were unlocked, and the description he gave of the person doing it matched the man standing outside my door perfectly. Story 2. Someone was already in the yard. This happened when I was 16, the first time my parents ever left me home alone for the weekend. At first, it was great. I ordered pizza, stayed up playing games, and watched movies way later than I normally would. By around 1 a.m., the house was completely quiet. I remember looking outside through the living room window and noticing how empty the neighborhood looked. No cars driving by, no lights on in the other houses, just the street lights and the sound of the wind. Eventually, I took the trash out to the bin at the end of the driveway. Our yard was pretty big, so the trash can was about halfway between the house and the street. As I was walking back toward the front door, a car slowly turned onto our street. It drove past me very slowly, slow enough that I could clearly see the driver watching me. That immediately made me uncomfortable, but the car kept going and eventually parked a few houses down the road. I told myself it was probably just someone visiting a neighbor, so I went back inside and locked the door. About 10 minutes later, there was a knock. 3 knocks. Slow, heavy. It echoed through the house. My heart immediately started racing because nobody ever came to our door that late at night. I walked over and looked through the peephole. A man was standing on the porch. He looked nervous, constantly glancing down the street like he was waiting for something. When he noticed the peephole move, he leaned closer to the door. "Hey," he said. "My car broke down the street. Do you think I could use your phone for a minute?" Something about it felt wrong. His voice sounded too calm, like he'd said the exact same thing before. I told him through the door that I couldn't help and he should try another house. He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned closer to the door. Then he slowly tried the handle. The door rattled slightly. Luckily, it was locked. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then he spoke again, but this time his voice sounded different, lower, almost irritated. "You sure you're alone in there?" The moment he said that, I heard something that made my stomach drop. Footsteps behind the house, like someone walking slowly through the grass. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it, But then I heard it again. A slow crunch of gravel near the side yard. That's when it hit me. The man at the door wasn't alone. Someone else had already walked around the back of the house. I ran upstairs and locked myself in my room and called the police. While I was on the phone, I heard something downstairs. A loud thump near the back door, like someone had tried to push it open. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. When they searched the area, they found the same car parked down the street. 2 men were inside. Both of them were arrested. But the part that still creeps me out the most is what one of the officers told me afterward. He said they had probably chosen my house because they saw me outside earlier and assumed I was home alone. But before the police left, one of them walked around the backyard with a flashlight. When he came back, he asked me something strange. He asked how long the ladder had been leaning against the side of the house. The problem was, we didn't own a ladder. Story 3. Something in the tree line. This happened to my cousin and me when we went camping in northern Minnesota a few years ago. The campsite sat right next to a massive stretch of forest. Miles and miles of nothing but trees, small lakes, and old logging roads. The kind of place where once the sun goes down, it gets completely dark, no streetlights, no nearby towns, just forest. The first night there was completely normal. We set up our tent, built a fire, cooked some food, and stayed up talking for a while before going to sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up suddenly. At first I couldn't figure out why, then I heard it. Something was moving outside the tent, very slowly. You could hear leaves crunching and branches snapping lightly under its weight. At first I assumed it was just a deer. That happens a lot when you're camping. But then it stopped right outside our campsite, and the forest went completely silent. No insects, no wind, nothing. Then I heard something that made my stomach drop. It sounded like a voice, but wrong. Like someone trying to imitate a person speaking, a stretched out whisper from somewhere in the trees. Hello? My cousin was awake too at this point. I could tell because I saw his phone light up faintly inside the tent. Neither of us said anything. We just listened. The voice came again, but this time it sounded closer, still coming from the tree line. Hello? But the way it said it felt unnatural, like the words were being forced out. My cousin leaned toward me and whispered that nobody should be out here at this hour. And then the voice changed. Instead of speaking, it made a long, high-pitched sound, almost like an animal, but not quite. And then we heard footsteps, long strides, moving slowly around the edge of the campsite, circling us. You could hear branches snapping much higher than a normal person would step, like whatever it was tall, very tall. At one point I could hear breathing, heavy, slow, from just outside the trees. Neither of us moved. Neither of us opened the tent. We just sat there in silence for what felt like hours. Eventually, the footsteps faded deeper into the woods. The forest sounds slowly came back, crickets, wind, everything normal again. Neither of us slept after that. At sunrise, we packed everything as fast as we could and left. But the part that still bothers me happened when we were driving out of the forest, about a mile down the dirt road from our campsite. We saw something standing just inside the tree line, tall, extremely thin. Watching the road, it didn't move. It just stood there between the trees, and as we drove past, I swear I saw it slowly turn its head and watch our car leave the forest. If you enjoyed these stories and want to hear more real encounters like these, make sure to subscribe. And if you have a scary experience of your own, feel free to share it, because you never know. Your story might end up in the next video.